Yeah, we're live. It is 5:55. Actually, I just stopped. I was watching the USA Mexico final, and it was tied. Oh no, it was 2-1. So if anybody Mexico scored a goal right before it came up. So really, really good game. So it was awesome. I kind of wish I was down there down there watching it. But it's time for a live feed, and today we're going to take a look at this. So what I had to do was I wanted to get you guys know that I went down and picked up the Sprint engine down at West Tech and brought it back. I have a Sprint engine that I ran that we set a bunch of records with, and the engine was still running when we pulled it out of the car. Then the car got stolen. So I went down and got that engine because the engine that was in the one that I bought that we wanted to set land speed records with was not good. It turns out it had a bad head gasket and a bad cylinder head. All easily fixed, but I just had another motor that was ready to go. In fact, I have another spare motor that I don't know whether or not that one is good. I haven't done a check on it yet. I think I might try to do that tonight to see if it's good. But unfortunately for me, I already pulled the cam out of that one to have another cam made reground. So now I have two motors that are in a state of disarray. One of them was all together. One of them I knew ran, and it ran good. So it's in good shape. At least it was when I took it out of that car years and years and years ago. So running when removed, the famous last words. But what I wanted to do, I decided today when I woke up today, I'm getting the engine in. So in order to do that, what I had to do was connect the engine to the transmission. So what I did was take the flywheel out of the bad engine and the clutch and pressure plate, and then I kind of sanded it up. It was not terrible. I would have liked to have had it turned ideally, but for right now, what we're trying to do is I just want to get this thing running. I'm excited about putting the Haltech on it. It's just going to help me get this thing running, and we just need to get it running so that I can tune it. That way I can get rid of all of the vane meter stuff and all the inlet and all that stuff. We're obviously going to put a bigger turbo and all that stuff, but if I can get it running and I have the ability to tune it, and I can change the air fuel and change the timing at different boost levels and stuff, just like I do with all the other ones with the Holly and with Fast and the MS3 Pro. As long as I can do that, then that's a win. Then I can put whatever engine in I want it. We can upgrade the clutch. I need to change the gearing in this thing for Bonneville anyways. Obviously, we've got to do a cage and everything. So there's a lot of stuff to do. But before I do that, I want to get this engine running. If I can get the engine running and get it in a position where, hey, look, it's doing what we need to do, then I just need to do things like change the injectors, change the intake manifold, put a camshaft in it, put a ported head, all the kinds of normal things are easy to do as long as we can make it work and do that. And then that way I can put an air to water on it, and we can run ice water. We can do all of those cool things, run it on E85, put big injectors in it, yada, 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 do all that stuff. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff, and we can make that happen. But in order to do that, I had to connect the flywheel, the clutch, the pressure plate, and then bolt the transmission up, and then install it all in. And as you know, there are always things along the way that, like, all of that is, if you just say that, that's all easy stuff. I would just bolt the flywheel on, bolt the clutch on, do all that stuff. But there's lots of things that stop you from doing projects quickly. We know that a 10-minute project turns into a 10-hour project. And here are some of the things. So one of the things is I didn't have that. You can see it has a pilot bushing in it, which is good. But what we didn't have is a clutch alignment tool. And I could have gone down to the store. They may have had one for the Sprint. It might be a common one, but I didn't want to go there. So I just made one. And so what I did was took a socket and found a socket that was close going into the pilot bushing, into that pilot bushing. Found a socket that was close. We made it perfect with a little bit of electrical tape, and then so it centers itself, so it's aligned in very nicely. And then I just started stacking tape on the outside of it so that it's centered in the spline of the clutch disc. So then once we did that, we could install it in the pilot bushing. It's centered there, and then slide the clutch in place, and then it's centered there, and then we could, after that, once that was centered, I could bolt on the pressure plate and then bolt the transmission up. And then as you can see here, the end result is that I was able to put the transmission and engine together and then set everything in. And the other things I'm going to have to do is, most of the motor mounts are bad. Luckily, one of the motor mounts I had already replaced on this motor from when I ran it when we were doing land speed records with it before. That motor mount was available. It might, I'll have to check and see. I haven't been down to the auto parts store to see if this stuff is available. It's got a good front mount. It's got a decent rear mount. The side mounts are terrible. The mount that you see up here in front, like by the shock tower, that's just not even connected anymore. It's, it's your typical kind of rubber mount with arms that go in and hold the centerpiece, and the centerpiece is the rubber captures a steel sleeve, and that's what the bolt goes through. Well, none of that is touching the center mount now. That's just wallered out. So I need to get another one of those. The lower mounts, similar thing, where they're so sloppy that it's just not even beneficial. The front mount is like that. So what I'm going to do, I think maybe I'm going to make those solid mounts. So I might just weld end plates to them with holes drilled through the center of them, and so everything has to line up perfect, and just solid mount it so that way we don't get a lot of movement there. I think it should work fine. We've run solid mounts. I doubt anyone is ever going to make any sort of urethane bushings for these, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to turn down Delrin or anything. I can take and make solid mounts for this in like an hour or whatever. I mean, it would take no time at all for me just to cap off these plates with circular or square. Honestly, I could just trim them really easily. I don't even care. Weld that together, put through holes through it, put that center piece in there, and then it would be just fine. It would, all of that would work out just great. And there doesn't need to be a lot of flexibility there anyway. It has rubber mounts on both the front and back. So if we needed a little bit of movement, it could have a little bit of movement. The front, like I said, the front bushing is new-ish. It has no miles on it. The rear bushing is in good enough shape, and if I had to, I could cap the rear one also. Just, again, make it mostly solid, and it would be fine. I am going to, because this is going to be an off-road thing, we're only going to race it. I'm going to have to. One of the problems I remember having with this thing before, when we were doing testing, is because we were trying to set land speed records with it. It was no longer a street car. We took the cat off of it. But in order to get that off of the cast iron exhaust manifold, it's held on by bolts that are in cast iron and have been there forever. So what happens is, I don't know what they made the heads of these bolts from. I think it's cottage cheese, because they immediately strip. They're very seriously contained into the threaded section of the flange that holds the cat, the lower section. But they have no strength at all on the top. So if I remember right, I think getting those off meant cutting the heads off, and then we make another section, or hollow it out, or whatever you want to do, depending on what kind of exhaust you're going to use. But we're going to put a bigger exhaust on it anyway, so we could just make another flange for that. I could make another square flange, which is really easy. It's four bolt holes in the center hole. That way I can make a 2.5-inch exhaust, which would be more than big enough for the kind of power output that we're doing here, and all of that would work out just fine. The other thing that I'm going to do, and I realized it when I was putting this in and putting the intake manifold on, because that's the other thing that kind of slowed this down, is I had this motor had a partial intake manifold on it, because this intake manifold is 2 pieces, had a partial intake manifold. And so I took the upper portion of the old manifold, put it on my new one, and then realized that one of the bolts on the thermostat was stripped out. And so, well, I'm just going to replace the lower section. Now the manifold gasket has broken. I can fix that. But then to replace the lower part of the manifold, now getting the old gasket off of the old intake manifold that I should have just left intact altogether, but getting that off was another hour of stuff, because it was, I don't know if it's age or if the thing had been overheated, but the manifold or the gasket was just like permanently bonded. So it was a lot of razor blade and chiseling and all of that stuff to get that off. But again, all of that is just the normal kind of time-consuming stuff. Make sure that you put all the things, like in this case, the manifold side is to the firewall. So make sure that you put all of the things on the back side of the motor, like there's a pretty typical of 4-cylinder and transverse mounted engines. Like with Hondas, there's the tube that runs to the water pump and transfers water over to the other side, so you can run it to the radiator and stuff. And then there's also fittings for those that go to various things like heater cores and up to the throttle body and stuff. And so make sure you put all of that stuff on, the alternator, the motor mount. Make sure you have all that stuff on before you try to drop the motor in, because getting to that stuff after the motor's in can be problematic. The other thing that happened is I realized that when we run the Haltech on this, we're not going to use this throttle body, because this throttle body has a weird plug for the TPS and stuff, and I'm just not gonna deal with that. We'll just since we'll probably use LS coils and stuff for this thing, we will put an LS size or style throttle body. I mean, the 78mm throttle body, even the stock one, the stock mechanical truck throttle body, will be more than enough more throttle body than this thing will ever use. I mean, 78mm, you think about that. That was big for the 5-liter days back in the day, and for a 1-liter sprint engine, it's more than we need. We could also use a some kind of Ford, like we could use a 5-liter Ford. We could use a 4.6 Ford. We could use one of those. But like I said, the harness probably will be GM based, so I need to look at that. But I'm thinking that that's kind of normal. So we would use a throttle body that already has that stuff on there. Just make an adapter, and the manifold that we run on there is not going to be this factory one anyway. It's going to be at the very least a modified, shorter runner, bigger common plenum, which will have a flange to mount, an LS style throttle body, let's call it, because we'll run the intercooler and everything different than we did with the factory stuff. So that'll all be fine. We'll run the turbo different than we did. We'll run a different exhaust manifold. But this is the important part of getting these projects done, is you got to wake up in the morning and decide, okay, today that motor and transmissions are going in, because they were sitting in different spots in the garage, and to get everything I had to move everything out of the garage. I backed the car out. When I say back it out, I mean I pushed it out, and then sprayed everything off, and with the steam cleaner or the pressure washer that I have, to clean the engine bay. Unfortunately, you can see in this shot of the engine bay that it has a bunch of like undercoating on it, which is just, I don't know, it's yuck. I wish that it didn't have that. And most of this stuff, like all these vacuum lines and all that stuff, all of that stuff's going to go away. We're not going to use that coil. We're not going to use the vacuum lines. We're not going to use the controllers. We're not going to use any of that stuff. If we put LS coils on it, the factory distributor's not there. It has a vacuum advance boost retard module on it. We may use that. We'll see. We may lock it out. Either way, there'll be a lot less stuff here, and it'll be, a little bit cleaner. And then I've already made another manifold, a header for a tubular header for another turbo for the Garrett turbo that I have. It's a T20 or T22 or something, and it'll be good. So lots of stuff, but again, make a decision. I'm getting this done. And don't say I'm going to work on this for 3 hours or 5 hours, 6 hours or whatever. Say I'm going to get this done. Okay, if you say I'm going to get this done, then you don't stop till you get it done. And in this case, it didn't take a lot of, it wasn't an all-day thing. It didn't take a lot of hours. Now what I need to do, and I remember when I picked up this car, one of the things I want to check is the shifter was not connected to the car. Where it comes up through the boot and through the tunnel and stuff, it wasn't bolted to the car. So I need to look at that and see, I need to bolt that up, because I want to make sure that it shifts in all the gears. Before, the clutch was kind of, the clutch obviously hadn't moved because that was broke. There was some rust on it, so it was kind of stuck. That obviously was all fixed. But now I just want to make sure that the clutch is working and the shifter is working and all that stuff, and so that before we go any further and go to all the trouble to get the motor running, and then now the transmission's broke. I mean, not that it's going to be a big deal. We're going to take that out anyways. We're going to take the transmission back out. We're going to put a different flywheel on there, even if it's just a newer one, but a different clutch and pressure plate, heavy duty stuff for the more power, because we're going to be making more than 70 horsepower that this thing was rated at. We'll put all that stuff in. I also need to change the gearing in it. We need to put I bought a set of tall gears for it for Bonneville. There's some stuff, but it's all of this is doable. So it should be cool. Let's see what you guys got going on. I'll play this again so you guys can kind of see the fun we had. I like the subject already. Well, Summit Pro S Stage 4 have piston to valve clearance. Which one? The one we ran a Summit Pro S Stage 4. They have a couple of different ones that are called that, so I don't know. It's big enough that you should probably check and make sure. What's the ultimate horsepower and torque goal for the Sprint? Not really that, but it's more a speed thing. So we have a bunch of records that we want to set, but it'll be somewhere north of 200 at the tire. She got through the owner of a 84 Z28. Car has been sitting outside since 2000, but on tar, no rust, plus T-Tout is picking up soon. Can I get the motor to turn over? 84. What motor is it? Is it a 305? LG4 L69. Yeah, that's. I'm curious. I have a lathe. This is another example why I could never live without one. Now that I have one. Yeah, a lathe would be an easier way to. I mean, it'd just be more precise. This took like, you know, a total of a couple minutes for me to wrap tape around it. In fact, the first time I did a little too much, and we take some off, and then it fits in there. It just has to fit in there like kind of snug and get the thing kind of lined up. Once I put the clutch on, it you know, pulled on pretty nice. Good to see you moving forward. Look forward to seeing this thing. Any chance you do the car as a build diary like others do? I know it's hard as a one-man show. Yeah, no, I took all the pictures of the things that I was doing today, and I will document all the stuff as we're doing testing and all that. So we'll have a full documentation of it. I did a lot of that. In fact, I wrote down way back when I first got my Sprint, I did a Sprint log. So I wrote down and photographed everything that I did. I immediately took the car out and did a top speed test on it. And then we did a chassis dyno to make sure to verify how much power it had. But it was all stock. And then we started doing modifications, and I logged everything that I did. Okay, we took it out and went this fast, and then we turned the boost up and it went this fast, and then we dropped the exhaust and it made this much power. All of that stuff was documented, and then I lost all my data. A while back, you put a 212 cam in a Gen 5 big block, not included the compression bump. Do you think the Vortec heads are worth 15 horsepower? Do I think Vortec heads over a Gen 5 head are worth 15 horsepower? I don't know how you not include the compression bump because it's pretty sizable. My brother is going the old school trick of filling the Honda factory mounts with urethane, those D16 swap. Yeah, I've seen those where they sandwich, you know, like for popular things, they did that where they sandwich in the stuff to fill in the voids basically. And then there are channels where the regular stuff is, and then they zip tie those together. I've seen that, and we've used those. We're just going to make it a little more solid than that. Razor blade rebuilding a Holly carb at the moment. There you go. Hope the Z28's in good shape. Vacuum block for the win, much cleaner, and I don't get lost in that forest of lines. Yeah, we'll run a billet boost block on this thing probably because we'll have a blow-off valve and a wastegate and a boost gauge and a map sensor. So we'll have a few things that we need to take lines off of. Car was originally an HO305. Nice, an L69 car. Those are cool. And good evening, Richard. Screaming Eagle weekend. Yep. No rust sitting on tarmac. Is Jimmy going to be putting a Tahoe tune files up on the site to download? We are going to be making tunes available for the turbo stuff. An 85 Z28 305 tune port motor. Woke up and lost drive in my Turbo 400. That's not good. Second does a 1-2 shift fine, but D slips and engine brakes. Uh-oh. Both cars were black with a gray interior. My 85 was blue, but when they did the Carfax, it came from Massachusetts. Original with black paint, gray interior. Both T-top cars have original T-top storage bags. Cool. I myself am partial to hard top stuff, but T-top stuff is good. Wasn't Smoking the Bandit Trans Am, wasn't that a T-top car? This was good. You can see I have the exhaust sitting here just sitting on the side here because I didn't connect that to the turbo yet. Notice I used only the best Harbor Freight tie-down strap, but you can see it's like quadruple there, so it's got plenty of strength. Plus that engine, you can pick up the engine transmission by yourself. It's not really that heavy. See, now I can just go right from the turbo into the throttle body. I don't have to mess around with intercoolers or anything. No fancy intercoolers. I was kind of surprised at how quickly all that stuff came together. I was wondering if the extra airflow they have is worth 15 horsepower. I can figure out what the compression is worth roughly. You made 380 on the Gen 5. Wondering if Vortec heads would add 20. Well, they certainly have the ability to do that. I just don't know if at that power level that you're talking about, if the gain will be that much. I'm pretty sure those heads flow more. So they could probably support more power than the peanut port heads do. I just don't know at what level they would add 20. 77 Trans Am had different T-tops. No, I know that those are different than an 84, but I'm just saying, did it have T-tops? I think it did. Any idea how to convert a 44 DCNF carb to blow through, or could one point me in direction on lots of in process but never finished projects? Does anybody have anything for pertinent? I don't know what the float bowl is on that carb. Putting Vortec heads in a 212 cam on a Gen 5 short block I have, hoping to make 400 horsepower. Okay. My friend in the Air Force had a 78 Trans Am red on red with a 403 Olds. Quick story, I worked at a dealer when they had Sprint turbos. I drove one the first time and was pleasantly surprised with the performance. 1988-ish. Yeah, 87. Keep in mind, I drove a 4479 Z28 sleeper then. Nice. One thing is, if you need to, you can pick it up and move it yourself. Yeah, the engine was not very heavy. Going to use the Cherry Bomb intercooler. That probably would work. I have another intercooler that Jim Bell did for me way back that we used, and I've shown you guys pictures of it. I made an air to water for this, and that air to water is already done, and it's probably overkill for what we're doing. But that Cherry Bomb would certainly work. The one thing about the Cherry Bomb is it's long, and it's not always conducive to mounting. And the one that I have, the in and out, is more conducive to working, because we made it to basically replace the factory core. Now, that might not be ideal. It was ideal for driving around on the street. Was there ever a 4-valve head for the Suzuki 3-cylinder? No, there was one for the 1.3-liter 4-cylinder, which is just this motor with another valve and a 4-valve, or another cylinder and a 4-valve head. So you could cut that one and maybe make it work, but not for this one. That would be better because these heads don't flow very well. Guys can make them flow better, but what we really need is it also needs that. It also needs more cam timing, and then it needs more RPM. Even though we were making peak power at about 6,000 RPM with the manifold that's on there right now, and I think all we have to do is shorten it, and we could make power. I only need this thing to run to 6,500 RPM. If we can make peak power 6,500, we're doing good. So if I can make like 210 or 220 at the tire and have it at 6,500 RPM, that's a win. And I don't think that that's going to be that hard. I don't think on E85 that's going to be terrible. I think it just takes, you know, a lot of boost, and well, it takes as much boost as it takes. I've only ever run this thing. We made 120 at the tire with the stock turbo, and then I made 170, I think, with a bigger turbo on it. But the reason that it stopped me there was because I was trying to do it with the factory vane meter and bigger injectors and adjustable fuel pressure regulator and stuff. And it just is not, trying to do that kind of trickery was not good. It was not ideal. And we didn't do it. We did it with good gas, like it was a race gas and pump gas mixture, but not E85. I've heard you can put a W41 in a Sprint. Yeah, not for the class that we're in. DIY hack tools is an awesome subject. Yeah, that I've done that before. I remember shaving down a broom handle to make it work for a clutch alignment tool also. So, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So you have to, you know, work with what you have and make that work. And that's what I did. I'm like, this is just two different diameter of things. And I said, I got tape, man. Tape will do that. How do the early Hemi heads compare to later inline valve heads? This Sprint head is supposed to be better than the later Metro heads, I'm told. I've never flow tested or compared them for power. Would the release of compressed air into the outside air inlet of the turbo provide worthwhile cooling? You mean like from the compressed air supercharging stuff? I mean, it'd be better just to do the compressed air supercharging and just not do the turbo. Because that's the thing is with the compressed air supercharging deal, we could make that work for Bonneville at this power level, because you wouldn't need very much of that, of what they like. If they have the ability to power 1,500 horsepower for 7 or 8 seconds or whatever, they certainly could do 150 horsepower for a lot longer. But yes, if you can get cold air going into the turbo, it would definitely be better. Because you would increase it. You'd be a compound setup then. Unfortunately, you'd be reheating it with the turbo. Have you looked at any of the new deregulation in the coming EPA stuff, and where do you see the OEMs going once this stuff takes effect? How are things going to go in California? I don't know the answer to any of that. I haven't seen any change in EPA stuff, and I haven't seen any change in CARB stuff, so I don't know what that is. I would like to see common sense stuff. I would like to see them go, hey, look, because we should be running catalytic converters. I mean, there's not a reason not to do that. We should be running clean cars. And so, because you can still make the performance while doing that. But they should give you a thing that says, hey, look, this thing has to be this clean. Okay. And then all the other stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't have to have a specific CAD on it. It doesn't have to have jump through all these hoops. It just has to pass. And so if your thing can pass the test and be under those limits, that should be the thing. That should be the common sensing. If actual like air quality were the goal here, that's the way that it would be. my previous job, I drove a 86 Grand National. That was impressive too. They were, I agree, those are cool. Those are definitely gentleman's express deals. Looks like it'd be an ideal swap for a motorcycle swap. They have done that. The guys from the Hudson Boys have done 1 liter bike engines in these. The problem with that always is getting the drive, like getting the transmission to hook up to, you know, the car axles and stuff. 170 horsepower with old school trickery for fueling is outstanding. Yeah, it was, you know, it got to the point where because I tried this turbo, I tried a 1.8 factory Volkswagen turbo, and I also tried the Garrett turbo. And then we also tried compounding this turbo, and I can't remember if it was the Volkswagen turbo or the Garrett turbos, one of the bigger turbos. We did a compound thing, and that worked fairly well. But we just got to the limit of I can't get the air fuel to be what I wanted all the time. The timing was okay because we were just using the vacuum advanced booster retard, and I could just turn the distributor to wherever I wanted that to be. We just watched and see what it is while we're making the run. But there's only so much manipulation I could do. And then also we get to the point where the vane meter in the inlet system itself, which we needed for measuring fuel flow, for determining fuel flow, we had to have that vane meter, but it became a restriction too, and so it just was not ideal. So now we'll get to run it with the Haltech. We'll get to run it, this thing has a speed density, you know, it's got a nature intended, without any of that nonsense, just an inlet tube going to, you know, a cold air source. And then a good which we had a good intercooler on the compound stuff, and on the bigger turbos we were running the intercooler that we had with water going through it, not ice water at that time, which is what I would definitely do. And we didn't run it on the 85, which I will definitely do also. Let's see. Scrolling. Could we use the difference of where peak power is on the Gen 5 and Gen 6 and add that to where the Gen 5 and the 212 and peanut port is? I don't speculate with intersections like that. You can do whatever you want. You're welcome to try to figure out whatever you want. The way to know is to obviously test it. Which engine management system and air intake would you use if you're building a boosted Gen 6 big block that wanted to keep it EFI? Well, we did that, and we ran it with a Holly, and that works fine. And that would work fine on a boosted big block. I think I would pick a different than factory Gen 6 fuel injection, unless really low speed power is what you want, or you could do a different lid on top of it and then shorten the runner length. But there are other EFI intake manifolds, I think, like if there's a high ram for it, that would be a good one, depending on where you want to make power up. Let's can work on a Marine 454. It's a comp 227, 241, 498, 483. Weird. 107 has an air gap intake on 750 Demon. I don't. Does it have a wet exhaust? If it has a wet exhaust, I'd be worried about that tight of an LSA in a 227, 241. I don't know if that will create a reversion at low speed with a 107 on it. Deliver Chem Hemi, if I recall correctly, was an old school version called the Doomsday Hemi. I am the ported Chevette man too. Trying to verify prior top speed. How fast was your sprint record? The fastest record we set was 119 and change, but that was at a standing mile. That was not at Bonneville. We were setting the car up to go to Bonneville, and the car was stolen though. So we set 2 records at the standing mile at Maxton, and then the clutch started to slip. Just move the horsepower calculation forward a few hundred RPM. I don't know, Andy. I don't know the answer to the question. Is Zach going to post Jimmy's data? Who's Zach? Sounds like the old 700 wheel horsepower combo will go 200 to 225 with total control at the Haltech. Well, I'm fairly certain that one was this motor. That was this motor that I just put in. It's a stock cam. It doesn't have a cam gear on it. It has very mild porting that Fred from AccuFab did when we were looking for just fuel mileage. Had a stock intake manifold. It had a different than stock exhaust manifold. It had like a tubular header that I just scabbed together, and then a bigger exhaust outlet also. So with a cam and properly ported head, I have forged pistons and forged rods for it too, and then a more dedicated intake. I even have an intake manifold where we have injectors spraying into the intake manifold. It's got a lot of things that we could try. I have a reground cam for it. So with all of that stuff, we make more NA power and we make more boosted power. And so all of that hopefully will work out. What motor do you think was the most underserved by available cylinder heads in an automotive application? My nominee is the big Ford 6 with its reversion flow head flow. I don't know what you mean by underserved. Do you mean that it had lackluster head flow? Who's Jimmy? Is his data on the Tahoe going to be posted? What data are you asking for that's not posted? Because I have videos up already on the Tahoe. We did an AR test on the turbos. We did a 3584 and a G42. So what is it? What data do you want to see? We're right now doing testing on exhaust size, like the catback stuff. So we're doing the stock one. We have a 3-inch, a 3.5, and a 4, I think. So we're doing all that testing. And then Jimmy is also going to put in his Tahoe, he's going to take the motor out, seal it all up, put ring gap in it, put head studs on it, do a razor blade rebuild on it, grind exhaust valves or whatever, and then put a 4L80 in it so that we can turn it up. Then the limitation will be probably that single 525 pump that we have in there. It's got 1,000 cc injectors. So if we could put another pump in there and then we could make a lot of power with the 4L80, it would be good, even better for testing. The other people appreciate how quick 1 mile in 62 Chevy 605 big block. Wish me luck. That's what you're going to do, a standing mile with a 605 big block in it. Is it a NA one? That's big enough to make a lot of power. Yeah, standing mile it's not for this kind of car, but standing mile is still a drag race for people because it's a struggle to put all of the power down. People like that have 605-inch big blocks or turbo, almost anything, don't have enough traction until you have lots of vehicle speed. And that's the problem we had with the Civic, is that one up there, is we couldn't put power down until the top of 4th gear, which was like 155 or 160 miles an hour. Like what motor got screwed over by never getting a good widely available head? Like we know a 4.9 with a chopped up LS head will make power like a mild 302 with no problem. Yeah, I think you could look at a lot of those that, a slant 6 is the same. Any of those 6 cylinders, a slant 6 is the same way. Most of those, because of the desired power level was really low, that they gave the cylinder head an appropriate amount of flow for the desired goal. But their goal was not like, and this was, at least with the American motors, like if you look at a B16 Honda, they gave it, or even a K series, they gave it like lots and lots of flow, and then gave it VTEC cam stuff. But with those 6 cylinders, and I don't know about maybe the Pontiac Sprint motor, maybe they had a better cylinder head. I'm not sure. But any of those, I think that the thought was before we started seeing this LS stuff, like with 300 CFM head flow, like from a LS3, and then the LT stuff the same way, because they started doing what the import guys had been doing for quite a while. But before that, they were just giving it enough flow. Like you look at a Fuelie head, you look at the tune port head or a throttle body head or a L98 head or even a Vortec head. All of those were made and had enough flow to make what the factory power output was, plus a little bit more, but not like taking it from 400 to 600 like an LS3 did. They didn't start doing that until later. Best supporting mod for a stock 02 LS6 Z02 to boost it. Yeah, I mean, most LS guys would do a cam and springs, and then you'd probably have to do injectors. I don't remember what injectors are in that. But if you want to do big changes in power, then boost, yeah. NA aluminum block, 6-speed, manual, 950 flywheel. Okay, that'll be good. Admiral or Prestige. I don't know enough about those 6-cylinders. There are lots of guys going really fast with like the 292 6-cylinders when they put really good aluminum heads on them. I would imagine that the Ford could, but I don't know enough about them. I've never done any testing and never gone down the rabbit hole to see what guys are doing with them. I remember guys doing Boss stuff, welding Boss heads together for those Fords. I think that the Slant 6 probably was at a deficit because it was smaller. Will I need to slave the LS6? How much power do you want to make? But I wouldn't pick an LS6 block to go beyond 1,000 horsepower. But we have sleeved those blocks and made lots of power with them. You can do that, or just get an iron 5.3 and do it with that, or an iron 6-liter. I know it's not aluminum, but when you now have 1,000 horsepower, you're not going to worry about 100 pounds because that becomes irrelevant. I'm excited on the Sprint about getting rid of all of this junk. Just taking all of this stuff off. I think the 300 would have been king due to simply being the largest, but the 292 Chevy may have run away with it due to the accompanying popularity of small block Chevys. Yeah, the 292 didn't have good heads, and it was I like the Ford better because at least it has individual ports and they're not Siamese ports. I don't like that on the performance head. Now maybe they've gotten around that, and I for one, I'd want a crossflow head, and for two, I would want individual port crossflow head, and I'd also want the head to be aluminum. That would be ideal. I'd want it to be an import. I'd want it to be a 2J or an RB or something like that. But they're not. But with an LS head on a 300 or Boss heads on a 300 or CHI 3V heads on a 300, they would be really good. I don't know that those 6-cylinders were. I don't know what the journal size is and stuff, so I don't know how high the guys RPM these things if they're really looking for power once they got enough cylinder head. What is the save threshold for a C5Z06? I don't like to run them more than 1,000 at the flywheel on those aluminum blocks. On an LS1, LS2, LS6, LS3, I don't like to run those more than 1,000. The iron blocks are fine, and then the aluminum 5.3 blocks are fine. But and that might be fine at 1,000 or 1,100 for as many times as you're going to do it. It's not like you're going to be endurance racing this thing or spending a lot of time at that power level because you just can't anywhere where it would be safe. Maybe it would be okay. That's just the rule I have. But I also have a rule that I like to put ARP head studs on stuff. And we're driving around in Jimmy's car in Jimmy's Tahoe right now with stock head bolts, and I think we've only run it up to 12 or 13 pounds or something. And it's been fine for what we've been doing on the dyno and running it on the street. But we're only doing 1 gear runs. We're only doing 1 gear runs on the street, and we're only doing 1 gear runs on the dyno, and we're not legging this thing out and giving it all. Someone needs to take an LS head, CAD it, then fix the spacing and cylinder count for the 300 and laser 3D print them or even cast them. What's a minimum count for getting a cylinder head cast? It's expensive, I can tell you that. Should do a late 5.7 Hemi. I've done lots of 5.7 Hemis. How about a twin compound turbo for the Sprint? I did that already once. My rules, I don't like using computers that sat on the elements for 3 years, but here I am spraying my motherboard with those. I can tell you that the computer that we had on the Omni GLHS, that the guys from, in fact, I got to go pick that up. I'm going this summer to get it. But when we got it ready to go to SDAC, when we did that deal, the thing, it rained while we were there, and the computer filled up with water. And so the trick was to unplug it and take it apart and set it up on the dash of the truck. I think Ben had a Dodge Ram, and just turn the heater on, and then you just dry everything off and put it back together. So now we made a shield so that the water doesn't get in there, but apparently that's a common problem. What is your goal for the Sprint? The Sprint is, I have specific records that we want to do, but it's going to be more than 200 at the tire. What if I build an LS3 5.5 liter? Would it be better off getting 1,000 horsepower? I don't know. I wouldn't pick an LS3 block, and I wouldn't pick an LS2 block, and I wouldn't pick an LS6 block, and I wouldn't pick an LS1 block. I would pick a 5.3 aluminum block, like an L33, LC9. There are others too. An LH6. I would pick one of those blocks, or any of the iron blocks. An iron 4.8 block, an iron 5.3 block, an iron 6.0 block, and that's what I would do. You don't need to build a smaller version of an LS3. If I was going to build an LS3, I just keep it an LS3 because it'll make more power everywhere. But if you went to a junkyard and got a 5.3 and put one of our camshafts in it, put a low buck truck camshaft in it, and put one of our G42 turbos on it, it would be 1,000 plus horsepower. So it's making the power is really, really easy. You don't got to get tricky with the motor. 1972 MGB midget. What motor do I put in it? It weighs 1,600 pounds. I've seen those really cool with turbo rotaries in them, which is awesome. Seen them in bug-eyed sprites too, which are really cool. The midget is also cool, but a rear-wheel drive K series is always good. Jimmy's Tahoe will be fine if it's careful under the curve. That's where they fail. We don't allow it to shift under boost because it has the motor has 350,000 miles on it. So does the 4L60 transmission. So that's the thing that we're worried about. We're worried about the thing deciding it just wants all the neutrals. Water cooled. I was putting it in my engine bay after running the engine. Bug-eyed Sprite is actually what I have. Okay, even better, yeah. I usually don't think anyone knows what that is. Oh no, I know what a bug-eyed Sprite is. They're awesome, and that's different than a midget. Let me do that when this 128,000 mile LS6 goes out. I sold my old chassis. I found a better shape auction car to start over. Okay, you may find that motor lasts a really long time. My truck has 340 something thousand. Jimmy's has 350,000 on it, so they last a long time. An MGB with a Ford 2.3 turbo. That's also cool. That's a good combination. Have you seen the video of the crazy Brazilian guys? Yeah, those are the ones that I'm talking about. 2.3 Ford is a solid motor. 4.8 with the Hellcat supercharger. I need to see this on a dyno. I think it's going to be like the one that I did with that Ford Racing blower. MGB would go well with a Miata Trans. Yeah, it'd be better than the original. I think that had an A series engine in it. It would be better than that, but not as good as a 200 horsepower motor would be. Had a 2.3 liter Ranger motor or something in it before the guy pulled the swap and sold the roller. Thought Calvin already did that. Did he? He may have done the Hellcat supercharger. My last L6 lasted 248,000. That spun a bearing. Some of those in cars have missed shifts and high RPM stuff issues that create problems. Trucks don't normally have that, especially trucks like Jimmy's and mine, where we're not racing. We were before we put the turbo on. We weren't racing it around. Now he is. Getting rid of the 4-cylinder boat anchor is a good idea. Damn, what's going on? It said Geometry on the screen. It's a Sprint. It's a Chevy Sprint turbo. We did the Hellcat blower and some LS-based engine. Not sure if it was which one it was. Yeah, I don't remember either. You must be an outlaw with that mileage and power production. Well, it's only driving it around at like, I don't know, it's between 7 and 10 pounds. I'm trying to make a 2011 5.7 Hemi as fast as a 6.4 or faster. What's the best way to do it without a power outer? You're going to be hard pressed to do that because one of those is a lot bigger and already has really good cylinder heads on it. And if it's a stock one, you might be able to get there with cam and ported heads, but it's going to be fairly expensive. Or a 150 shot would do it. What's up the exhaust? Yeah, I just had the exhaust sitting there. So today, Dan, what I did was, you can see, I'll show you the curve here, the sequence. I took my motor that I went and got from West Tech. I had to make my own clutch alignment set up with duct tape and a socket, and then connected the engine and trans. And then I got the engine and trans, my old motor from that I set the records with, and the engine and trans back in the Sprint today, because that was my goal. So I was able to do that today. That's just the exhaust sitting there. That's the exhaust from the original motor that came out of it. I didn't grab my other exhaust. I need to make sure that it's down there. But getting that, disconnecting the cat from that section is those bolts that go down into the flange for the cat immediately strip the heads. And sometimes you have to cut them off. And so that's problematic because we don't want the cat for Bonneville, obviously. It's not mandatory for what we're doing. And we're going to change the turbo anyways. I just wanted something on there that I can run so we can start the motor with the Haltech, and Ish can make sure that all that's working and stuff, and we can make that work and run it. That's the Chevy version of a Geo. Yeah, this was a Metro or Firefly or Cultus, or there was a bunch of different names. Mitsubishi Mirage prices continue to go down. Just got the alert. Gonna have to rewatch. Does a trans have an O2 sensor? I know. MG midget is way different than an MGB. Yeah, an MGB is a bigger one than a midget. My buddy that I grew up with and hung out with in high school had a 67 MGB. It was beautiful. His dad repainted it. It was yellow, spoke wheels, leather interior and stuff. It was nice. It had problems like all MGs do, but it was cool. We always had to push it when we would leave for lunch. I feel like the Sprint motor would make a sick go-kart power plant for my shopping cart build. Are there any no-brainer and experienced Sandy Mile rookies should know? Yeah. Well, for me, what I would tell people is make sure that your clutch isn't going to slip, because that's what happened to me. and make sure that you have good brakes, and that get on them when you get on the brakes. Get on them easy to begin with, and put a little bit of heat into them. Don't just jam on the brakes, because they're going to be ice cold. And if you're trying to slow down from really fast, you know, give some time for temperature to heat up. Don't immediately warp them. How about a B16 in the Sprint? Has that ever been done before? I don't know if they have or not. I would think that they would. I don't know about the dimensions on that. I mean, they put a 4-cylinder in this, so in this chassis, so we know that it'll fit. For what we're doing, that's the motor's too big. So I wonder if you saw the guy at Sick Week with an old Marquis wagon with a 6.9. I didn't see it. Does he have a 6.9 Mercedes motor in it? You could also do it by using Eagle 5.7 Heavens at a pre-Eagle block, boost the compression to 12.5 to 1. I believe that should put it well over a 470 horsepower crank and a good cam and intake manifold. Yeah, I don't think he's going to want that for driving around. Never heard of any of those others than the Metro and the Sprint. Yeah, the Firefly is Canada. The Cultus, I think, might be Japan. The cat bolts can be painted. They are. I remember having to cut them off. I also remember getting them with vice grips and heating it and all kinds of stuff. MGB do have a good exhaust note for a 4-cylinder. Look up the Flying Shingle MG. Ken Miles, built, weighed 950 pounds. Yeah, Ken Miles won an SCCA national championship in a MG, right, before he got hooked up with Shelby. What engine does a smart car have? I thought it was a 3-cylinder 12-valve. I don't know. I'd have to look. Once Richard makes 1,000 wheel horsepower using a Sprint engine, it will triple in price. Yeah, they didn't make very many of these. They're harder to find, but that 1,000 horsepower is not a real thing. Break when you see Plant Life. Debo's garage, but an SRT4 and an MG. Not sure if it ever finished. When are we taking to Bonneville? Well, it depends on if we get it ready. We could take it this year. Green pack wasn't strong enough to break the bolts up. It just spins on the heads, just become round. I mean, even with anything on there, they just round immediately. It looks to me like I don't know if the rust is eating away the bolt, but it looks like the bolt head is tapered, like it gets bigger down toward the base. And so it's a different size bolt down there than it is at the top. And so I don't think that they ever designed those to come off. You have to keep the original engine for your class at Bonneville. For some classes, it has to be the engine that came with the car. It can be a different displacement. For some classes, you can also do swaps. So I wonder if you saw the guy with an old 6-liter swap with twin GT42s. Just wondering if they were yours. We don't have GT42s. We have G42s. So if those are GT42s, that's an earlier style. We have a guy that's running twins, and I actually just spoke to Chad today about finding me a guy who has a car that's already out there running fast with turbos that he has, and I'd like to test our turbos on it. Anyone else had issues shimming up a Chevy starter to a big block? LS or other welded Sprint head after this record? No, I don't know what would come after this. I mean, we have like 8 or 9 records that we could go after, so we have a lot. And probably won't be done by this trip, I don't think. But I have another motor that has, that's the forged rod, forged piston, ported head, all of that stuff. So we could go even faster. I have seen a Cleveland welded headed Ford 6-cylinder. That's pretty cool. Aaron, you mentioned a 6.9 liter Mercedes V8. The Dodge 440 police car rated at 250 crank horsepower. Really the last of the underrated 70s cars. Those 6.9s were fast. I know that. Should I take the LS6 and swap it in my daughter's 2-liter Miata? Build me a cast block monster. There you go. I wish that it didn't have all of this, like, I was hoping that that was just like grease and dirt, but it's not. It's undercoating. I wish it didn't have all the undercoating on it. Not that this is a detailed show, engine bay, but that makes it look terrible. Got 1 more minute. And you'll be happy to know that I did hand sand that because I thought, you know, I'll just go down and buy another one. They're cheap. It's $100 or $150 or whatever for a clutch and pressure plate and flywheel, brand new one. And I'm like, nope, I already got it. It's going on. And so I hand sanded that. I hand sanded the pressure plate. I hand sanded the even the clutch disc. The clutch disc had a lot. It had, I should have measured the thickness, but it just, I eyeballed it. It looked like it was thick enough. So I'm like, this will probably work. Wasn't the Hammer the same engine or not? Was the AMG Hammer, was that a 6.9 liter? Did it start off as that? I think that was a 5 liter though, not the 6.9. The 6.9 was earlier than that. Let's see here. It was the small car. It was the E-Class. What, 5.6 liter to 6 liter V8 powered. Yeah, I think that these motors, these later ones, were better. Produced 286 horsepower. Replaced by a 375 horsepower Mercedes 6 liter V8. So yeah, it was not a 6.9. And the 6.9 liter was big, and for its day, you know, made good power, also because it was big, but it wasn't as good as a more modern version, and wasn't as good as a 375 horsepower AMG version of the motor that they made for that car. I've used my fingertips through the pressure plate to center the clutch disc. That works great. Yeah, you can do that. The problem is that on this Sprint motor, the throwout bearing is tiny. You couldn't put your little finger in the throwout bearing. It's tiny, tiny. Probably going to be so much stuff shaking on that car. The flywheel is the last thing you probably need to worry about. I've driven these cars before at speed, like at 120, and they were fine. Coyote Sprint would be sick. I see a Coyote trucks at pick and pulls. Yeah, no, I have no interest in swapping a big motor in this. I only have interest in the motor that's in it and setting records in it. I might have interest in making a 4-valve head for it, but not anything else. We do have the other Metro, the non-turbo, just a standard 3-cylinder Metro. In fact, it's an XFI. So Jimmy and I have been talking about taking the engine and transmission out of that, and then LS swapping that, something that we could take to LS Fest and make it a rear-wheel drive. I used to like the Sprints; they're pretty zippy. Yeah, and making one that made, and having one that made twice the power that a stock one does, it was a lot of fun then. Oh, you meant for yours? Okay, no, that's good. You should do that. we were also talking about what it would take on the 5-liter Mustang, because we have an aluminum LS going in there. So I have the clutch assembly from the guys at American Powertrain, and I bought a transmission for it. We're going to put all that in, and then I was wondering how hard it would be so that we could take that to LS Fest and show it around and stuff and drive it around, have fun. But also, it'd be cool to take that Mustang to the Mustang Fest thing that they do, the Ford Fest, or whatever it's called, but keep the transmission and put a different bell housing and put a Coyote in front of it, and then probably a different drive shaft, because I would think that the drive shaft length wouldn't be the same. But if we could do a Coyote swap in it and then take that to the Ford thing, then that would, turbo Coyote, that would be a win too. How are you going to make a different head for this engine? Well, what we'll do is they make for the Suzuki Swift, which is a 1.3 liter 4-cylinder version of this motor, same bore spacing and everything. They make a 4-valve head for it. So we could cut and weld that head and put it on this 3-cylinder, get rid of one of the cylinders, and then we have to make new cams for it. That would be kind of cool. And then port the head and, have do cams for it and stuff. Because I'm sure, I haven't seen the actual flow data, but I'm sure that 4-valve head has got to flow a lot more than this head does. Plus, since it's an overhead cam, you also now have more RPM. So we could, if we needed to, we could run more RPM and make power at a higher engine speed. Different intake manifolds for it and stuff. Make some good power with the 4-valve. I would think, if we could get another 30 or 40 CFM above what we could do with this head, like I'd like to send one of these heads to some, a head porter out there. There was a guy that I was looking at that I would kind of like to send one to. Trying to think about what this guy's name is. I know that you guys probably have heard of him. He always comes up on my feed and he shows a bunch of ported stuff that he's done. And a 3-cylinder aluminum head should be pretty simple to do, I would think. I mean, can't find it. Well, oh well, I'll look it up. It's not David. Let's see. Have you ever looked into some of the C3, D3 Ford NASCAR heads at Bolt to Windsor? There's some 400 CFM heads. Yeah, that goes way back to when Ford was using those heads. Almost all of the Cup stuff and the Trans Am stuff, those are almost all Canada valve stuff. Wonder if a 3-cylinder GM makes today, if the head would even come close to fitting. I have a junk GTI head that the exhaust cams broke. If you're interested, the Smart 4.2 has a 1-liter 12-valve 3-cylinder with 89 horsepower. Yep. Nope. I'm doing this one. This is my guy. I can make the power that it needs to make. And there, like I said, there are some classes that we have to run the factory motor. And if I was going to swap a motor in, it wouldn't be another 12 valve. The Swift GTI is that head is really the way to go because it's designed for this motor anyways. It's designed for, we can use nitrous in a fuel class. So in specific classes, we can. We can also use nitromethane. We use both. The Sprint is an overhead cam. Yeah, it's a single overhead cam with rockers on it, but it's a 2-valve head. And again, we're not trying to run a lot of RPM. That's not really necessary. We can, I mean, with the way that this head flows and the cam that we could put in it, it's not RPM is not the thing that we need. I don't like running Bonneville motors at high RPM anyway. Even the B series that we ran only ran, and it only did it in 5th gear. Actually did it a little bit in 4th gear too. I think it ran 8,600 or something. 86 or 8,700 is the most that it ever saw. I know everybody wants to run 10,000, but that's not me. The speed classes range from that we would need to run or in the 140 to 150 range. There's about 8 of them that are different speeds, depending on what the modifications to the, basically to the aero. For one of them, we have to add a non-stock turbo. So I'm gonna have to run either another, I could run another supercharger or a second turbo, so we could do a compound. Which would, you know, that wouldn't be too hard. I've already done that. All the G series are like 8,000 or 9,000. Yeah, we don't need to, like I said, I would rather make the power at a lower engine speed. Just seems to be more reliable that way. I know guys like to push them, but I would rather put gear in it. And, you know, with a turbo motor, we can have lots of average power production in the range that we're running it, because the nice thing is we can size the turbo so that it, you know, we don't want immediate boost response. Like, I don't care what's going on in the first couple of gears. It does, and at low engine speeds, it doesn't matter. We don't have traction for that anyways. So we just get it going, and then once we can put power down, then we can put power down, and then we're only in the range of, you know, let's say 45 to 6,500 RPM or whatever, and maybe even less than that. I haven't done the, I don't think I've done the split on the gears from 4th to 5th. Let's see. Those are all different final drives. Those are different tire sizes. I think we did look at 4th on some of the really tall tire stuff, because you might also be able to do that. But we have, we will be running on the 3-mile course because we're not fast enough to run on the long course. We need videos. Yeah, I definitely will do videos. Yeah, we could put an AMR 500 on it. I would just spin it and keep it out of the way. Have you ever removed a bearing from a case using grease? Yeah, you can do that too. Just fill the backside of it with grease, and as long as you could get it to seal and press out enough before all the stuff starts leaking out. All right, limited on gears? No, we have a 352 final drive. Came from one of the single cam motors. And so I have gearing that will put us, with gearing and tire size, we can go with a fairly tall tire and 6,500 in that gear, we can go 167 at 6,500. But we won't ever do that. We will change the tire size to get it to go, for instance, with one setup is 155. That'd be really nice. So I'm looking at 21, 22, and 23-inch tall tires. And then I have I have the factory gear set with different size tires, and then this new final drive with different size tires and different engine speeds, and it's so I have all the data. Looking to order some lifters off your site for my 5.3. Are they GM? Yes, they are GM LS7 lifters. Use a punch to stuff the rag in the hole and the bearing comes out. Oh, yeah, you can do it that way too. Yeah, as long as you're making pressure in there and pushing out. As long as you can seal it and push the pressure, and it pushes on the big surface area instead of the little surface area, you are golden. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow. I'll start getting some other videos up too. I got some new stuff.